And now, Virgin Most Powerful Radio is pleased to present Hands-On Apologetics with renowned Catholic author and apologist, Gary Michuta.
And welcome, everybody. Hands-On Apologetics. You have entered into Virgin Most Powerful's Apologetics Dojo. It's great to be with you today to talk about how to explain, defend the faith, clarity, charity, and confidence. And got a great show in store for us because we have our good friend Keith Nestor coming up on the other side of the break. As you know, Keith Nestor is a convert to Catholicism and a very on-fire convert at that. He's a former pastor, former youth pastor, and basically for more than 20 years, his full-time ministry was in the United Methodist Assemblies of God, Evangelical Free Churches. Eventually, he came into the Catholic Church, and he has been busy just being a lay evangelist, lay apologist, and doing all sorts of great work. And so I thought for today we're going to switch things up as we usually do on Fridays, and we're not going to talk specifically about apologetic topic per se, but just about how to grow in holiness, especially growing in holiness in 2021. And Keith is going to give us the lowdown and some tips on how to grow in holiness because, like I said, it's all part of the same fabric, folks. You know, being a defender of the faith will be worthless if you're not holy, if you're not living the faith out. And, and that's also, I say that defending faith, it also goes hand in hand with spiritual warfare. You know, it's all part of the same cloth. And speaking of spiritual warfare, I need to recommend to you guys a free resource that's coming up tomorrow, January 16th. Mark your calendars, or even better than that, go to virginmostpowerfulradio.org website, and you'll get a pop-up banner where you could register for the Spiritual Warfare Conference 7 with the great Jesse Romero and Dr. Dan Schneider. It's going to be a fantastic event, as they all are, and you don't want to miss it. So please, if you haven't registered, please jump on the website and register, because I'm all for as many resources as possible, especially when they're so simple. You can just click a button, fill out the registration, and bam, you have high impact, high intensity, high information, spiritual warfare, tactics, and, and advice right there. So you don't want to miss it. Coming up tomorrow. Tell your friends too, because it's a huge event. And I think this is kind of the signature, what do I want to say? Feature of Virgin Most Powerful Radio is their spiritual warfare conferences. So don't miss it, folks. Don't miss it at all. And also, before we begin, I don't want to forget what I usually do is give my shout-outs, my yoo-hoos, my welcomes to all of you watching on live stream. And so I want to welcome all of you watching live stream, Facebook, YouTube, all the other platforms that we broadcast on. Welcome aboard, folks. Hey, Ricky. Hi, everybody. Also, I want to welcome all of you listening on radio around the country and also via podcast around the world, either through our handy-dandy phone app or through our flagship website, which, of course, is virginmostpowerfulradio.org. And that's where you can go. That is where you can access our programs. Maybe you know somebody who is struggling. They want to change their lifestyle, get churched up, become more holy in 2021. And maybe they want to listen to Keith and listen to some of his advice. So just go to our show on the top of the website page. Scroll down to Hands-On Apologetics, and you have access to this show and all the other shows we produce. You can share it with friends and tell people about it. So, don't hoard the wealth. Share it with people, folks. Just because we're stationed in place doesn't mean we can't do apologetics in place and we can't help our fellow man. And especially, with social media, it is so simple. It's merely just a click of the button. So please, do all those social media type things. Subscribe, tell people about it, and spread the wealth. Spread the wealth. All right, so let's jump to the Finding Fallacy. Every Friday, we switch things up. Instead of doing an informal fallacy, we look at a propaganda technique. Today's propaganda technique is misuse of relative terms. This is an interesting thing because relative terms, there are some terms that only have meaning when you compare it to something specific. For example, how many times did you walk down a grocery store aisle and you see a product that says 50% better, 25% less fattening? All those, relative terms. And of course, that only has meaning if they're anchored in something. In other words, 50% better than what? Or 25% less fattening than what? Or new and improved. New and improved compared to what? If they don't tell you that, then these are terms that are generally very positive. They might induce you to buy a product. But you have to figure out what exactly are these relative terms anchored to in order to make sense. Because after all, if something is 25% less fattening than, let's say, pure lard, it's not really that much less fattening, is it? So that's a common propaganda technique, just something to have in your toolkit. Whenever somebody pulls out a relative term, make sure you know what it's attached to, and so you could have a good grasp of what it means. And that's our Finding the Fallacy for today, a propaganda technique, misuse of relative terms. What's our early church father for today? Well, it's a biggie. It's Tertullian. Tertullian was born sometime around AD 155, died around 250. He was born at Carthage of pagan parents, like I said, around the years 155, 160, somewhere around there. He became a lawyer of considerable repute, and after his conversion to Christianity around the year AD 193, his expert knowledge in the field of law was turned to the defense of Christianity. Now, there's a big debate as to whether or not Tertullian was a priest. The great patrologist Johannes Question believes that it's quite possible that he was a cleric. Otherwise, the popularity of his works are kind of difficult to explain, because if a layman simply wrote, how would you explain why they were so widespread? The counter to this argument is that although, yes, it is widespread, usually when he's quoted by other people, he's quoted anonymously. And also Tertullian, by the way, is one of the first, if not the first, to write theology in Latin, which was a new vernacular when Greek was passing away as the common language in the West. So, of course, since he wrote in the new vernacular language, i.e. Latin, his works would generally be very popular. Now, one thing all of you apologists need to know about Tertullian is not all of his works are of equal value. Tertullian's literary activities embrace the years 197 to 220 AD. Within that span of nearly 25 years, his numerous writings fall into three fairly distinct periods. He has a Catholic period, his so-called semi-Montanist period, and his Montanist period. Montanism, by the way, was a heresy that arose in Phrygia. And so Tertullian starts off an Orthodox Christian, but near the end of his life, he joined the Montanist sect. And therefore, you have to be careful when you're reading his writings or appealing to his writings that you know where he is theologically when he wrote it. So the Catholic period's from 197 to 206, and these writings is marked by his Orthodox opinion. And then there's the semi-Montanist period, between 206 and 212. Now, there's no such thing as a heresy known as semi-Montanism. When patrologists speak of Tertullian's semi-Montanist period, what they mean is that he was wavering at this point between orthodoxy and this heretical sect. So he kind of goes back and forth. He's almost a Montanist, but he still hadn't made a definitive break with the Catholic Church up to that point. So that's the semi-Montanist period for Tertullian. And then finally, he finally leaves the church, joins this sect. And so his writings from 213 all the way to 220, those are known as the Montanist period. At this time, his rigorism had become extreme. His anti-clericalism had reached a point of invective. While he takes an exaggerated view of the priestly role of the layman, he clearly admits that new charismatic prophets and prophetesses of the Montanist are legitimate. Also, another thing to know about Tertullian is that he formed his own sect known as, here's a surprising name, the Tertullianist. The Tertullianist, Augustine knew of this sect around Carthage at the end of the 4th century. It was he that converted the last of them. Some authors indicate that Tertullian outgrew even the Montanist and became a founder of his own sect bearing his own name. More likely, the name is simply attached to a North African Montanist, he being far and away the most prominent person in that circle. But whatever the numerous possibilities, it soon seems unlikely that the name Tertullianist was attached to the group during Tertullian's lifetime. After 220 AD, we hear of him no more, except for certain remarks of Jerome that indicate that he lived on for a number of years after 220 to a ripe old age, dying probably around the year 240 AD, possibly as late as 250 AD. And one last thing you need to know about Tertullian is that he and Misuse Felix are both contenders for the first Christian author to write in Latin. And it's very difficult for scholars to figure out which one's first because somebody plagiarized off the other person. So it's not clear whether, who was first. Was it Tertullian or was it Misuse Felix who deserves the title of the first Latin author? And that's our early church father for today. Tertullian. Coming up next, we're going to be talking with Master Apologist convert Keith Nestor about growing in holiness. You don't want to miss it. We'll be right back.
Sirach 11:24 says, "Do not say, I am self-sufficient. What harm can come to me now?" According to St. Catherine of Siena, presumption is like vermin burrowing at the root of the tree of our soul. If we do not uproot it with great care and humility, it will eventually destroy the soul. May God keep us from all presumption of mind and heart, and realize that we depend on Him for everything.
Did you know my mom's gonna have a baby?
She is? Will it be a boy?
Or will it be a girl? We don't know yet, but we heard the heartbeat and my dad said this is gonna be someone very special.
You mean like being a president?
Or maybe a doctor. Well, probably maybe like a singer or dancer, I think.
Hello, my name is Marianne Koharski. I'm the director of Pro-Life Across America. We know that every baby is a miracle and has the potential to do great things. If you know someone who is pregnant or in need of alternatives or assistance, or would like to support the work of Pro-Life Across America, please call 1-800-366-7773 or visit our website at prolifeacrossamerica.org. Pro-Life Across America is non-political and totally educational.
Pro-Life Across America, the Billboard people.
This is Terry Barber. I want to thank you for your support here at Virgin Most Powerful Radio. Here's an easy way to do it. If you're going to sell or buy a house, call Real Estate for Life, 877-543-3871, because they're going to get you a Christ-centered agent to purchase your home or to sell your home. And at the close of escrow, a portion of his commission goes right back to Virgin Most Powerful Radio. Call 877-543-3871. Thank you so much for your support.
Now, back to Hands-on Apologetics with Gary Machuda. If you'd like to join the conversation, call 888-526-2151. Here's Gary.
Welcome back, everybody. Hands-on Apologetics. Well, it is January, the new year, and I know many of us often, have goals of what we want to achieve. Well, here's one goal for you. How about growing in holiness? How about becoming a saint in 2021? Well, to give us some advice and help us through this journey of growing in holiness, we have our great friend Keith Nestor with us. Keith is former youth pastor for more than 20 years in full-time ministry. He served in the United Methodist, Assemblies of God, Evangelical Free Churches in various roles. Then in 2017, after a 20-year-long discernment process, Keith resigned his full-time ministry position and joined the Catholic Church. He's the author of an awesome book. It's called The Convert's Guide to Roman Catholicism, Your First Year in the Church, which also helps give a down-to-earth, realistic view of the transitions, obstacles, joys, and challenges that converts face. He's also the executive director of Down to Earth Ministries, and he creates a ton of great content on YouTube and his podcast, Catholic Feedback. So, Keith Nestor, welcome back to Hands On Apologetics.
Hey, Gary, thanks again for having me, man. I love being here. It's good to see you.
Yeah, boy, that's quite a bio. Did I catch everything? You are such a busy person.
I think you added some stuff. I don't know. I mean, there is actually more. I mean, one of the things that has been happening, and we can kind of lean into this when we talk about the holiness thing, is, the Rosary Crew has become basically one of the most central things to my ministry. The Rosary Crew is our daily live stream prayer that has connected people from 63 countries plus. We have thousands of people every day that gather on my YouTube channel and on Facebook and stuff to pray the Rosary live every day. We've been doing it since March 18th of 2020. So we're closing in on a year, and it's been amazing. So that's something that keeps me pretty busy.
Yeah, that's exciting. Now, what exactly is the channel name? Just so people can go there to join.
Keith Nestor, just youtube.com/Keith Nestor is my YouTube channel. So that's the easiest way to find me.
Sweet. All right. Yeah. Great stuff. Great stuff. And congratulations on coming up on the year now.
I never thought it was going to happen. We thought when we sort of talked about doing this, 50, that was back when we were in like the 15 days to slow the spread idea. So I thought, okay, we can do a daily rosary live stream for 15 days pretty easily. And here we are almost a year later, and we've been praying it every single day, which is nice. It's kind of, when you have to be in the same place typically at 5 o'clock every day, it's, the whole world revolves around that, but it's been incredible.
Yeah.
I love it.
Yeah. Now be truthful with me, Keith,
Sure.
As a former pastor, former youth pastor as a Protestant, would you have ever pictured yourself doing live stream rosary?
All right, no way. Even after when I became a Catholic, I thought there's no way I would ever do that, because every time I get hit with a bunch of people who hate the rosary and they come after me, well, why are you praying to Mary and all the stuff and repetitive prayers? I used to be that way. I used to think those same things. I used to feel that way. So when someone is in that spot, I get it, because that's how I was. I never in a million years would have thought I would be doing this. And then when I became Catholic, I still had, I'm all right, I'm not so sure about all this Marian stuff. I'll do it, but it wasn't really the heart of my faith. And then as I progressed through this, and then of course, as the rosary became this thing that we started doing, it's completely radically changed my life. And I'm hooked on it. I absolutely love it, but I never in a million years would have thought I would be doing this.
Yeah. God, surprises us sometimes with His plans for us. So let's talk about growing in holiness. In a way, what else is there? Grow in, doing some sort of fantasy football league or losing weight. That seems so superfluous when, what about growing in union with God? That's huge. Top of your list.
Yeah. The truth is we're all trying to grow in something, whether we're trying to become proficient in a particular skill or in something physical with our bodies, or whatever it might be. I think we're wired as human beings to want to grow and progress in one thing or another. But yet, even as believers in Christ, there can sometimes be these obstacles to our own desire to really grow into holiness. I think that sometimes we can find ourselves just wanting to know, well, what's the minimum I have to do to get by? What do I have to do? And then we hit that, and then we sort of move on to other areas of our lives. And I think that we should always be in a process of growing in grace and growing in holiness, because that's what Jesus calls us to do.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, even weightlifting, you don't go into weightlifting thinking, okay, I'm just going to do 3 reps. Okay, 1, 2, 3, I'm done. You always want to push it. That's the only way you grow.
Yeah, and I think that's a great analogy too, because a lot of things line up with that, Gary, like in the sense that lifting weights and pushing yourself physically, it causes discomfort, it causes pain. And oftentimes to grow in holiness, you have to sacrifice things and put yourself into it. And it can be uncomfortable sometimes and even painful, but that's how you grow. That's the process by which you become more a disciple of Jesus Christ.
Right. So, okay, let's say somebody says, okay, I'm committed. I'm going to try to grow closer to the Lord this year, grow in holiness. What do you think the first steps they should do?
Well, I think the first thing that if you want to grow in holiness, and the idea is, especially in 2021, okay, because I want to kind of be focused on all the stuff that's going on. The first thing that I think we have to do, and some people I can tell are going to be like upset with me when I say this, is we have to start living in reality, okay? We have to live in reality. And what I mean is this. There's been so much turmoil, so much anxiety around things with the election and politics and government. And I've seen so many, especially Catholics, that have become so hyper-focused on political issues, because they are in many ways connected to our faith, but they've become super hyper-focused on those things, and they haven't been willing to accept the way things look like they're going to be. So, every day you see people who are posting things or sending messages saying, well, there's still hope. Things can still be turned around. Things can be this. Things can be that. And all of those things are typically connected with a particular outcome that they want to see with regard to our government. And what I'm saying is, look, you can sit around and, we can all wish things were different, or we can say, okay, we have to accept reality for what it is, and then now figure out how we can live into that. Because the truth is, if we don't acknowledge and understand the world that we live in, and we're living in like a dream world, then we're never going to be able to function and grow in holiness. So step one would be to live in reality, which might seem kind of obvious, but I think for a lot of people, it's a struggle right now because we don't like reality.
Yeah, right. Yeah, that's a really good point, because you get very anxious about things that really are beyond your control. And so, I think a lot of times the devil kind of deceives us into focusing on important things, but really things that doesn't affect our holiness. There's nothing we can really do to contribute one way or another to it. And we neglect the important things, justice, mercy, prayer. It turns out to be a huge distraction.
That's exactly what I'm talking about. Because if the devil can keep us distracted from how we can personally grow in our faith, then he's won. And there are so many different ways that he seeks to do that. And sometimes it's by getting us so riled up, again, with things that we can't control. Because if we spend more time focusing on things we can't control, then we spend less time on things that we can control, which, believe it or not, is our progression in holiness. Now, I'm not saying that we can do it in and of ourselves, but the Lord wants us to grow in holiness. He'll give us the Holy Spirit to help us with that. But sometimes we say, okay, God, hold on. I don't want to worry about that. I want to get riled up about what's going on in the country. And I think sometimes we have to just say, look, that's not my deal. That's not my deal. My deal as a Christian is to follow Christ. My deal as a Catholic is to receive the sacraments and live according to Christ's holy church. And it doesn't matter what's going on in the media or in the world. There could be a day when it does matter. And I guess some people could say that it does from a certain standpoint, but we still have to control our reactions and our behaviors. And if we don't live in reality, then we can't even deal with what's going on in front of us.
Yeah, I totally agree. In fact, it's a lot easier to get angry or get politically involved or something like that than to be a good, loving husband or to be a caring neighbor, And it's so easy to opt for the easy thing of, being, getting into all these other issues rather than, like you said, reality, where the rubber meets the road of just being a good person, good husband, good wife.
Yeah, and that's exactly what I try to focus on more than anything. Like, when we do our prayer time in the Rosary Crew, I don't talk about politics. I want that to be a prayer group. I want that to be a safe place, like a retreat from all that, because so many people are so hyper focused on that even when it comes time to pray, we can't do it, because all we want to think about and all we want to talk about is, this political stuff, which I'm not saying it's not important. Don't get me wrong. I'm not burying my head in the sand or saying it's not important. I think it is. But if that becomes the ultimate thing rather than the backdrop of our lives, right? It's not the ultimate thing. The ultimate thing is our faith in Christ. But we can easily, push our faith aside and completely focus on these other things that we can't control. We got to quit doing that. So number one, if you want to grow in holiness in 2021, live in reality and focus on the things that you can control and stop freaking out so much about the stuff you can't control.
Yeah, very good. Well, we have maybe about 30 seconds or so to the break. Maybe you could throw out your next point, and then that would be a great cliffhanger. Number two,
to grow in holiness in 2021, you have to control what you listen to or watch. You've got to start thinking critically about the types of things that you're bringing into your senses. Are these things that are going to help you grow, or are they going to be things that are going to rile you up and cause you to become angry and distracted?
Very good. Yeah. So basically, information control. What's good for you, what's not. What do you expose yourself to? What you don't. Yeah, fantastic. Actually, we had a little bit more than 30 seconds, but I think that's pretty self-explanatory. If you aren't aware of things like that, then anything's game, and you kind of trip yourself up in terms of growing in holiness.
Well, the thing I think that's not as obvious though is that needs to be applied to even let's say the Catholic stuff that we watch and listen to,
Yeah.
Just because something is Christian or Catholic doesn't mean it's going to be good for us. And that's relative to who we are and the things that we're riled up in. So if you're a person who's trying to lower your anxiety level, then you should really stop watching content from guys that are trying to rile you up, But if you're a person who's not engaged and you don't really have an opinion about anything and you need to know some stuff, maybe you do need to get riled up, and you need to start staying away from stuff that's, mellowing you out.
Exactly. We're chatting with Keith Nestor. More to come on the other side of the break. Listen to Hands On Apologetics.
Logan, what has Virgin Most Powerful Radio done for you?
Well, Virgin Most Powerful Radio, I got to say, I've been a listener for about a year now, and it's really helped me grow closer to my faith and the fact that I'm listening and I'm getting unsugar-coated, clear, charity with clarity Catholicism. And it has really helped me even, grow so much deeper in my faith as a young man and discern the priesthood and have a love for Jesus Christ. And this is so seen on the Terry and Jesse show on Virgin Most Powerful, the unsugar-coated, clear truth of our Catholic faith that is so lacking today. It's almost like the Terry and Jesse show. It's the orange juice Catholicism. It's filling things up. I just need to give them a shout-out, my praise. I'm just so appreciative. It's just really helped me, and I know people want to hear this. It inspires me to want to speak it, and it inspires me to even go as far as discerning the priesthood to think I should speak this. We need to stand up for our beautiful faith. This is the unsugar-coated beauty, and this is just what I've seen on the Terry and Jesse show. I encourage so many listeners to start donating and support this cause. It has just really impacted my life, and all I just want to give is some praise to it.
Leviticus 11:44 says, "Consecrate yourselves and be holy, because I am holy." St. Vincent Pallotti said, "You must be holy in the way God asks you to be holy." God does not ask you to be a Trappist monk or a hermit. He wants you to sanctify the world and your everyday life. May God show us the path to holiness and help us to follow it all the days of our life.
Buying or selling your home or your business property? This is Terry Barber. Real Estate for Life underwrites the Terry and Jesse Show. And they can connect you to one of 900 pro-life real estate agents around the world. And when they receive their referral fee, they will give 80% of it to a pro-life organization. Wow, that's 80%. realestateforlife.org, 877-LIFE-US1.
This is Jesse Romero. You're listening to Hands-On Apologetics with Gary Machuda on Virgin Most Powerful Radio.
Welcome back, everybody. Hands-On Apologetics, and we're chatting with Keith Nestor about getting holy in 2021. And Keith already gave us some great advice. Like, for one thing, get real, get realistic, get rid of the stuff that doesn't matter, focus on what does matter. And then right before the break, we were talking about you need to curate like what you're exposed to and what you aren't. And a lot of that, Keith, I think involves knowing who you are, where you are in your spiritual walk. Like you said, you might have somebody that you might feel that you're kind of tepid, you don't really care. Well, maybe you should be getting resources that will get you fired up and encourage you. Where if maybe somebody else could be on the other end of the spectrum where it's getting harder and harder to love people because you're getting so angry. Yeah. And maybe you need to look at what you're watching or listening to and change your diet.
Yeah, I think with everything that we're talking about, a couple things. Number one, I'm already sort of taking for granted that you are doing the things you're supposed to do in your faith. You're going to mass, you're receiving the sacraments, you're avoiding sin, you're praying. So I'm not like starting from nothing. I'm assuming that you're already a person, because I think most of your listeners are already there, where they're like, okay, I want to grow. But sometimes we hit those plateaus where we go, okay, I've been kind of in the same spot. I'm going through the motions. What do I do to up my game? So I think that's important. And then secondly, like we said, we're all different. We're wired differently. So what we have to do is set our goals and say, what do I need to do to get there? What do I need to do to get there? If I'm trying to calm myself, I need to be doing things that help with that. And if I'm trying to increase my passion or whatever, I need to be doing things to get there too. But what we often do is we just go with the flow of whatever seems natural to us. And I think sometimes holiness runs against that grain because, our natural inclinations often aren't toward holiness. They're toward worldliness or fleshliness. We don't have to be told to overeat or to, have lustful thoughts or to become greedy. No one ever says, look, you really need to do that. That's just where we're going to go naturally. Okay. What we need to be doing is push against that by the power of the Holy Spirit. So we have to know who we are and let the Spirit work within us. And I think, controlling what you listen to and watch is going to be that way. I remember when I first became a Catholic, there were a lot of people that I'm like Catholic for like 2 months. And there are some people that their whole entire Catholicism is rooted in like anti-Pope Francis stuff. So they just decide that that's what I need to be into. So everyone people would be sending me all of this stuff about how Pope Francis is bad or this or that and how the church is messed up and all these different things. And I'm like, hey, I'm a brand new Catholic. What are you doing? Like, but this is all they can talk about. And what I'm saying is, look at where you are. If you want to grow in holiness, sometimes you got to step out of those things that you're constantly immersing yourself into so that you can move beyond that. So it's tough, though. It's tough to know sometimes, but you really have to follow the Lord in what He wants you to do and the way that He wants you to be.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's often when we're too focused on one particular thing, we end up being a one-note trumpet. It's like everything we say is the same thing over and over. It gets repetitive. People get turned off, and really, the fullness of Christ is that should expand us. That we have many different interests. We could relate to many different people. And so it's good to take an assessment, where you are and, am I focusing too much on something? I mean, I know personally I'm obsessed with apologetics, so I got to be careful because I could be, it's a lot easier for me to read an apologetics book and maybe not do things for my wife or do things with my kids. I know.
That's a huge point. So that's a great example. You know, if left to your own devices, you're going to focus on those apologetics things, which is great because that's what you need to be doing. But maybe for you to grow a little bit, God might say, okay, Gary, I want you to start studying more about prayer or more about giving or whatever it might be. I think sometimes we have to say, what's keeping me, you know? And a lot of times I remember thinking about not so much the issue of what do I have to do to grow, but think about what is stopping me from growing. Because when Christ abides in us, he says that we will bear much fruit. You know, apart from him, we can do nothing. But if we abide in him and he abides in us, then we will bear fruit. So sometimes when we don't feel like we're bearing fruit, it's because something is stopping that from happening. And oftentimes, if you want to grow, you just have to remove that thing that's holding you back.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And, sometimes the good can be the enemy of the best when it,
Amen.
You make it into something higher than it ought to be. So again, that's also part of step one, just getting real, getting down to reality and figuring out what's important, what isn't, and how everything fits together.
Yeah.
Okay, well, step 3. So we have get it real. We have decide what to expose yourself to, what not to. How else can we grow in holiness?
Number 3 is this. We need to find a new way to obey. Okay? Find a new way to obey. In 2021, what you need to do is look at your life, look at the commands of Christ, and find some new way that you're not already doing to step into obedience. And the truth is, there's plenty of material there in the Bible. Of course, Jesus talks about forgiveness. So maybe that could look like, this year I really need to improve in how long it takes me to forgive somebody, or I really need to reach out to that person I've been holding a grudge with. That might be a new way to obey for you. Or you might have someone in your neighborhood that is in need, and you've decided to be Jesus to that person and go to them and take care of them, to minister to them. Maybe you're going to evangelize somebody. Maybe you're going to read your Bible more. Maybe you're going to start praying the rosary every day or have a holy hour every day. Depending on where you are, the point is this: add something new to your faith that's a new way to obey. Because oftentimes when we add something new, it can help us to grow because we start to work muscles spiritually that we haven't worked before. Yeah. I'm going to stick with your analogy, Gary, by the way, because it's a great one.
Yeah. Well, there's a lot of parallels with weightlifting, that's for sure. So, it's really easy for you to say, well, how can I grow in holiness? I'm a pretty obedient person. I go to Mass every Sunday. I go to confession regularly. I try to do good. But I love that because what you're saying is to look at obedience and look at new ways to express those things in addition to what you're doing. So maybe, I'm kind to my neighbor, but how about a different way of showing love to neighbor? Cooking food or just remembering birthdays or something like that.
So something that can get you out of your normal pattern of what you do for your faith. Something that will bring a shock. It's like when we do work out in the gym, if you do the same exercises over and over and over again, you can get really good at those particular things. But what trainers know is that sometimes you have to intentionally switch things up because you're going to work different parts of that muscle if you change things up. And I think when it comes to our faith, we have to always be on the lookout for areas of weakness. And sometimes when we step into a new thing, it'll expose areas of weakness. So for example, let's say, I'm really good at praying the rosary, but I'm not so good at, loving my neighbor. And I've decided this year, okay, my neighbor across the street, I'm going to reach out to them. I'm going to shovel their snow. I'm going to talk to them about the Lord. I'm going to bring them something or do whatever. And I might realize, I really don't enjoy that. That's taking me out of myself. Well, guess what God's going to use that to do? He's going to help me to be more sensitive to needs in general everywhere, because that's exposing an area that we haven't worked in a while. So finding a new way to be obedient to God, I guarantee you, if you do that and you stick with it, be intentional about it though. Like, don't just sort of like, okay, whatever, and then wait for something to happen. Like, sit down, make a decision, and decide this is what I'm going to do in 2021 to obey God. And it's a new way for me. you do that, I'm telling you, talk to me again in a year, your life's going to be totally different.
Yeah. In weight training, there's a saying, no pain, no gain. And so if you're going to grow in holiness, be prepared. You're going to be uncomfortable. There's going to be, you're going to end up with situations doing things you might feel awkward doing, but you stick with it and you'll grow in that area.
Yeah. And again, we talked about this before, but for me, that really happened in 2020 with the rosary, because I had decided that I wanted to pray the rosary every day, like in 2019. And I did most of the time, but there were times where I didn't for whatever reason. And it wasn't until I made this commitment to lead it every day that now it's like, okay, this is a new thing to do. And I'd never led the rosary before. I'd never led it. I'd been asked to lead it. And I always was like, no way, because I was afraid. I was intimidated. I thought, what if I mess it up? And it was crazy because I was a preacher for so long, but you put me in front of a group of people and say, hey, can you lead the rosary? I'm like, no way. Well, jumping in and doing it, it's really pushed me into a new area, exposing some weakness that I had that's helped me to become strong in those areas. So now in 2021, I'm like, okay, now what else can I do to be intentional, to grow in a different way?
Yeah. Yeah. Now, Keith, after doing it for almost the whole year, I bet for you to stop cold turkey would be difficult because you just.
Oh, I could never do it. I could never do it.
Yeah.
No way. Yeah. There's no way. I mean, for me, it's the center of my day. I mean, 5 o'clock Central is like, okay, this is everything builds to that. And when that's done, it's kind of like I just sort of exhale and then I can settle into time with my family and time of rest. But up until that part of the day, everything is just building toward it. And if I didn't have that, I feel like, oh man, it'd be like I was starving myself.
Yeah. Yeah, that's beautiful. Yeah, so that's a great example, I think, of stepping out of your comfort zone because you stick with it. It's uncomfortable, but eventually, God's grace, you grow in grace and holiness, and it habituates. It becomes a habit, and then it's a hard habit to break once you form it. And it's a good habit to have.
It is. And I think for everybody watching right now and everybody listening right now, there's something in your life right now, you guys, that God wants to build you into for his purposes, for your glory, for his glory, but for your holiness, but for his glory. And he needs you to strengthen this area of your life so he can use you for the kingdom. So he's ready to do that. And when you do that, on the other side of that is an incredible blessing, an incredible opportunity. So don't miss out on it. Get after it.
Absolutely. We're chatting with Keith Nestor. More to come on the other side of the break.
Welcome, Daniel. You're on the line. What's on your mind, brother?
Hi, I just wanted to share a testimony about Virgin Most Powerful Radio. I had a buddy at work who, he's a lukewarm Catholic guy, and I wanted him to start listening to the Terry and Jesse show, so I kept telling him to download the app, and he kept putting me off. So one day, I grabbed his phone and I downloaded the app for him. I went on vacation, and I kept telling him to listen to it. He was kind of put me off. I came back from vacation. He comes to my cubicle, and he says to me, hey, man, I've been listening to Terry and Jesse's show, and it's great. And it's made a big impact in his life. The guy, he's going to weekly adoration a couple times a week. He goes to the Mass in the mornings. And, he's an on-fire Catholic, and he promotes the Terry and Jesse show on the Virgin Most Powerful Radio.
Daniel, what a testimony. And I want to encourage our listeners to get those cards by going to virginmostpowerfulradio.org and do what Daniel's doing. Go out and spread the faith by inviting people to listen to Virgin Most Powerful. Daniel, thanks for your testimony, brother. God love you.
You're welcome.
If you shop on Amazon.com, there's an easy way to support Virgin Most Powerful Radio. Just visit smile.amazon.com and type in Catholic Resource Center under the desired charity. Now, when you log into your Amazon account and purchase products, a portion of it will automatically go to support Virgin Most Powerful Radio at no cost to you. Thanks in advance for supporting CRC and VMPR, and may God richly bless you and your family.
Buying or selling your home or your business property? This is Terry Barber. Real Estate for Life underwrites the Terry and Jesse Show. And they can connect you to one of 900 pro-life real estate agents around the world. And when they receive their referral fee, they will give 80% of it to a pro-life organization. Wow! That's 80%! realestateforlife.org, 877-LIFE-US1.
Now, back to Hands-On Apologetics with Gary Machuda. If you'd like to join the conversation, call 888-526-2151. Here's Gary.
And welcome back, everybody. Hands on Apologetics. We are chatting with Keith Nestor, who's the director of Down to Earth Ministries, also the author of the book, The Convert's Guide to Roman Catholicism, Your First Year in the Church. And Keith, yeah, I mean, growing in holiness in 2021, great advice. You need to get real, get realistic. You need to figure out what you'll expose yourself to and what you will not expose yourself to. And then right before the break, we were talking about find a new way to obey, which is a great challenge. You know, one question I do have for you, what happens if you try a new way to obey and it just seems dry and you don't feel like you're really growing in holiness and it's difficult? Should you stick with it, or maybe is that a sign that maybe God has different plans for you, or what do you do?
That's a great question. I mean, I think at some level, everything you're going to do in this area is going to feel a little rough, maybe in the beginning. So if you just bail as soon as it gets difficult and go, oh, no, I don't want to do this, then you won't get through that.
Yeah.
So I would say this, really be in prayer about what it is that you want to do, and then push into that and stick with it for a while. But I don't know, if after a time you feel like this isn't working out and there's some other way that the Lord's opened up to you, then, you can pivot. But don't mistake uncomfortableness or, difficulty with the fact that it's the wrong thing. Sometimes that's the most right thing that you can do.
Yeah. Good point. Yeah, it's always hard to discern, tenacity and patience and endurance, but also, maybe you're going down the wrong path, and that's really just not what God's calling you to do. But yeah, you kind of still have to keep pushing before you discern like what God has in store for you.
Yeah, and the fact that what you're doing is something to obey Jesus, you know that you can't go wrong.
Yeah,
It's not like you're, starting a new business or something like that, or something that may or may not be a mistake. Whatever you're doing, you're pushing into obedience. So
yeah,
either way, it's going to accomplish something.
That's right. Yeah, very good. So yeah, 2021, find a new way to obey. What other advice do you have for those who want to grow in holiness during this new year?
So I got one more. This will be number 4. And some people are going to be like, this is awesome. And some people are going to be like, no way. But the fourth way that you can really grow in holiness in 2021 is to truly invest yourself in a godly relationship. Okay. And I'm not talking about like boyfriend, girlfriend, husband, wife. You already have those things going on. Great. I'm talking about there's somebody in your life that can help you to grow in your holiness. Like the Bible says, iron sharpens iron. As iron sharpens iron, so one man sharpens another. If you turn your faith into sort of a solo venture, you're going to run out of steam. But if you can find a way to become connected with somebody else who is also wanting to grow in holiness, you're going to have a way easier time, because you're going to need encouragement along the way. You're going to need somebody to hold you accountable. You're going to need somebody who you can go to when you're struggling, or when you don't know if you can continue, someone who can encourage you and cheer you on, and someone who you've said to, look, this is really what I want to do. So a good example that I can think of is, before the pandemic hit, my wife, she was invited by this woman in our parish to start going on Fridays to a church to pray the 7 Sorrows of Mary Rosary. And my wife had never done anything like that before. And this woman just reached out to her and said, hey, would you be willing to come and pray with me, on Fridays? And my wife she's kind of one of these people that's like an introverted extrovert, you know, or I should say an extroverted introvert. She's great with people. She loves to be around people, but her safe space is kind of like to be home and to be, you know, she's not the one who's going to initiate that, is what I'm trying to say.
Mm-hmm.
So when this woman reached out to her, I was kind of like, whoa, are you going to do this? Because I could kind of tell that was pushing her a little bit out of her comfort zone. And she's like, yeah, I'm going to do this. I think that's really cool. And that turned into this incredible thing where I could really see God moving in her in that. And it was all because this woman reached out to her and they formed this friendship around that. And I think that that's something that each of us can do. It's something that each of us can do is we can find someone who is like-minded with us that can help us to grow, and we can lock arms with them and say, listen, I want to grow this year in holiness, and let's do this together. Part of the awesome thing about the Rosary Crew is that it's truly a community. It's become a family, and people are connecting in all sorts of ways to help each other. And that's been an incredible thing. So if you really want to grow in 2021, you'll recognize that you can't do it alone, and that God's given us a church. He's given us a family for a reason. There's no Lone Ranger Catholics out there. We're supposed to be all working together, helping each other, sacrificing for each other, praying for each other, and pushing each other. So find some way to invest in a godly relationship this year.
Yeah. Yeah. And I love the Rosary Crew idea because, you know, with COVID, there's so many things with lockdowns and social distancing and stuff. It's hard to invite people to something going on in your parish because generally there aren't things going on. But, you know, you can invite them to join the Rosary Crew with you and, you know, encourage them to, you know, join an online group. And I think that's even easier. You could still remain in the comfort of your own home and yet be connected and like you said, help each other.
Yeah, and you can do that through the phone. I mean, you can covenant with someone and say, hey, let's have a phone call every week for an hour. We're going to share our prayer concerns and our prayer intentions, our struggles, and we're going to take some time to pray together, and we're going to push each other. You can do that through Skype. You can do that through Zoom, through whatever you want. There's so many ways to make this happen. But the fact is this: if you try to do it by yourself, you know, a cord of 3 strands is not easily broken, you know, but a cord of 1 strand can be snapped. And when things get tough, when it becomes difficult, when you want to quit, if there's nobody there, you know, it's going to be tough. So, you know, to continue your analogy, you know, in 2020, I decided I was going to get back in shape and I started going to the gym. Okay. So 2020, I start going to the gym and I'm working hard at it, but it's, you know, I had a little fire at the beginning, but then it kind of dies down. Sure. Well, then the pandemic hit and we all lost that and we couldn't go back until probably August or whatever. And I noticed that it was tougher for me to just become consistent and motivated. So in like October, I joined a group of guys from my parish. One of our guys is actually a professional full-time trainer, and he has a group of guys. We're called the St. Michael Barbell Club. And we meet at his gym every Monday, Wednesday, Friday morning to work out together and pray together. And since I've had those guys, those other brothers in the faith and this trainer, I haven't missed a day, you know. But when I was on my own, it's real easy to cut yourself some slack and say, oh, I don't feel like it. I don't want to do it. The same thing's true in your faith. If it's just you, you're gonna bail from time to time. But if you know you've got other people waiting for you and counting on you, you'll have a way better chance of being faithful to that. So invest in godly relationships. That's a big one.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, you know, it's funny that the weightlifting analogy really works well because when you're lifting weights, it's actually dangerous to lift alone. You need a spotter in case you get into trouble. And but if you have a bunch of guys in the gym or a bunch of girls, you know, and that forces you to work out. It keeps people, you know, keep their eye on you. They push you. They encourage you. And you kind of feel like a quitter if you wimp out one day and say, I just don't want to work out.
Absolutely. Absolutely. There's so many things about that are parallel to our faith. You know, if we don't follow through, we know someone else is there going, hey, wait a minute, what about this deal? So find a way to invest in a godly relationship and for the purpose of your discipleship. Okay. It doesn't just mean you go out and have fun together. That's great. But really make the focus, the center of that relationship, the gospel. So it's like a gospel-centered relationship that's going to help you grow in holiness. it'll change your life. It'll become the most important relationship, outside of your spouse or your kids or whatever. But it'll become something that's going to help you grow in incredible ways, and you won't be able to live without it.
Yeah. So you got to initiate, invite people. And, one thing I'm a big fan of, if you don't know anybody, pray that God will put somebody in your life, and then keep your eyes out for that person, because
Amen.
God is so faithful. Whenever I pray something like that, immediately somebody shows up on the radar screen.
That's such an awesome point, because, so many people say, oh, well, I don't have anybody. Nobody likes me. Nobody wants to be my friend. Like you said, pray about it and then keep your eyes open. You don't decide who it's going to be. God decides who it's going to be. So if you say, well, I really like that person and they don't pay any attention to me, so it's not going to work, then you know what? You've missed the point. Let God pick that person for you. Chances are it'll be somebody you never would have thought, and it'll be 10 times better anyway.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, Keith, hey, we got a couple of minutes left. I want to talk about your ministry, where people can go. First, the book, it's The Convert's Guide to Roman Catholicism. Where can people get that?
They can get this on my website, which is downtoearthministry.org. So that's earthministry.org. It's also available on Amazon. And it's a book that's written from a guy who, I wrote that book the year after a little over a year after my first year of being Catholic, to help people who are making that transition. But what's been interesting has been that people who are cradle Catholics have told me that they've loved it too. So it's definitely a different kind of Catholic book, but I would love for you guys to check it out. Also, you can find me on YouTube, like I mentioned. I'm on Instagram at Keith Nestor Catholic. I am on Facebook, Keith Nestor Catholic Speaker, and I'm on Twitter, barely, at Keith Nestor 1. Okay, I had to put a 1 because my old account, I can't remember my password. I can't get in, so I had to make a new account. I don't do much on Twitter though, but the website is really the place to interact with what I'm doing. And then I have a podcast called Catholic Feedback that airs every Tuesday at 11 a.m. Central. And the purpose of that podcast is to connect the eternal truths of the Catholic faith to everyday life.
Great. Yeah, I was just going to ask about the Catholic Feedback.
And you were on there, Gary. Gary was on
right. Yeah, despite that, it is an awesome series of podcasts. Although you do have to use better discernment, though. You have guests on. Give us some teasers about some upcoming installments.
So last week we just had American Ninja Warrior star, the Papal Ninja, Sean Bryan from NBC's American Ninja Warrior. Wow. He was on the podcast to talk about overcoming obstacles to sharing your faith, because he's a guy who his whole persona on that show is revolving around his faith. I had Steve Ray on 2 weeks before that. I've had lots of different people. Next Tuesday is a first. People have been saying, "Hey Keith, when are you gonna have some a girl on there, or a woman on there?" Well, next Tuesday we have a young woman coming on the podcast to talk about what it's like to be a godly young woman in the Catholic Church today. Because I don't know anything about that.
Yeah, right. Well, Keith, hey, thanks so much for coming on the program. We appreciate it.
Thanks for having me, Gary. God bless you.
And you too. That's Keith Nestor. Yeah, check it out, folks. Lots of great stuff. Great podcast, great book. Man, the hour's flown, but coming up next, we have High Impact Catholic Talk coming at you with the Terry and Jesse Show. Thank you so much for listening, and God willing, we'll be back again next week. It's the Holiness on Apologetics. Bye-bye.